Have you ever heard of a fire alarm alarming? Have you asked yourself what it means when a fire alarm rings? Preferably, the alarm rings when there is a fire and does not ring in the absence of a fire. However, if the alarm rings when there is no fire, it is a false positive or a type 1 error in statistical terms. Conversely, if the fire alarm fails to ring when there is a fire, it is a false negative or a type 2 error. And now, you'll be asking me, Simon, what does this example have to do anything with this video? Well, my friends, we are going to talk about the types of errors in hypothesis testing. So, what is hypothesis testing? Hypothesis testing is a procedure in inferential statistics that assesses two mutually exclusive theories about the properties of a population. The tables below summarizes the four possible outcomes for a hypothesis test. In statistics, a type 1 error is a false positive conclusion, while a type 2 error is a false negative conclusion. One of the real-life examples would be you deciding to get tested for COVID-19 based on mild symptoms. There are two errors that could potentially occur. Type 1 error, false positive. The test result says you have coronavirus, but you actually don't. Type 2 error, false negative. The test result says you don't have coronavirus, but you actually do. Let's dive in a little bit deeper on each of the two types of errors. First, we have type 1 error. A type 1 error means rejecting the null hypothesis when it's actually true. It means concluding that results are statistically significant when in reality they came about purely by chance or because of unrelated factors. Example: in your clinical study, you compare the symptoms of patients who received the new drug intervention or a control treatment. Using a t-test, you obtain a p-value of 0.035. This p-value is lower than your alpha of 0.05. So, you consider your results statistically significant and reject the null hypothesis. However, the p-value means that there is a 3.5% chance of your results occurring if the null hypothesis is true. Therefore, there is still a risk of making a type 1 error. The null hypothesis distribution curve below shows the probabilities of obtaining all possible results if the study were repeated with new samples and the null hypothesis were true in the population. Now, let's dive into about the type 2 error. A type 2 error means not rejecting the null hypothesis when it's actually false. This is not quite the same as accepting the null hypothesis because hypothesis testing can only tell you whether to reject the null hypothesis. Example: when preparing your clinical study, you complete a power analysis and determine that your sample size, you have an 80% chance of detecting an effect size of 20% or greater. An effect size of 20% means that the drug intervention reduces symptoms by 20%. More than that, the control treatment. However, a type 2 may occur if there is an effect that is smaller than this size. A smaller effect size is unlikely to be detected in your study due to inadequate statistical power. The alternative hypothesis distribution curve below shows the probabilities of obtaining all possible results if the study were repeated with new samples and the alternative hypothesis were true in the population. There are a lot more examples where the types of errors in hypothesis testing can be used. finding out if the students in a particular class have the same average score of 75, in testing fertilizer's impact on plants, and as well as testing the effectiveness of a particular vitamin. No matter how difficult a question is, types of errors in hypothesis testing is proven to be very useful in coming up with an answer. Without this concept, our world would not be the same as we know it today.